Elena Cruz had learned the art of invisibility. In a glass and steel skyscraper that glittered against the Manila skyline, she was one of hundreds of employees working at Reyes Global Industries, a name synonymous with power, wealth, and prestige. Her official title was IT Support Specialist, though most days it felt more like office ghost. She fixed login errors, replaced faulty keyboards, and politely answered calls from executives who had no patience for technology that didn't bend to their will. But Elena didn't mind. She had always been the quiet type, the one who stayed late without complaint, the one who would rather blend into the background than stand in the spotlight. With her simple ponytail, thrifted blouses, and secondhand shoes, she hardly looked like she belonged in the same building where million-dollar deals were signed every day. And that was fine. She wasn't here to impress. She was here to earn a paycheck, send money back to her parents in the province, and keep her younger brother in school. Dreams of luxury, of recognition, of romance, those belonged in the fairy tale she had long since outgrown. Still, there were moments, fleeting and impossible, when she allowed herself to wonder. Like whenever she caught a glimpse of him. Alexander Reyes, billionaire, CEO, the man whose name adorned the building itself. He was a myth made flesh, a headline that walked. Elena had only seen him twice from afar in her 3 years at the company, but that was enough to understand the obsession surrounding him. The first time had been at a company-wide town hall meeting. He stood on stage in a tailored suit, every word measured, his voice deep and commanding. He spoke of expansion, of vision, of turning obstacles into opportunities. The crowd had hung on every syllable. Elena had simply stared, wondering how someone could look both ruthless and magnetic at the same time. The second time had been in the lobby. He'd walked past with his security detail, a blur of authority and presence. Their eyes had met for half a second. She doubted he remembered. But Elena remembered, because in that moment she had felt like she was standing too close to the sun. Since then, he had remained a distant figure. A man who lived in penthouses, who flew across continents, who dined with presidents and shook hands with kings. And she was nobody. That morning had begun like any other. Elena swiped her ID, rode the crowded elevator to the 14th floor, and slipped into her cubicle with her coffee. She was halfway through her emails when the building seemed to shiver. It wasn't physical, but something in the air shifted. Phones began to ring. Managers rushed down hallways. A murmur spread like wildfire. By noon, the crisis was undeniable. The company's central system had crashed. It wasn't just a minor glitch. The servers were down, databases inaccessible, emails frozen. Millions, perhaps billions, were at stake. Whispers said a global merger, scheduled to finalize that very afternoon, now hung by a thread. Elena stayed in her seat, listening to the storm unfold around her. Senior engineers were summoned. External consultants were brought in. The conference room on the top floor turned into a war zone of panicked voices and flashing screens. And then, just when she thought she would slip unnoticed through another disaster, her phone rang. Elena Cruz, a clipped voice asked, "Report to the 30th floor immediately. They need every available IT support staff." Her stomach dropped. The 30th floor, the executive floor, the place where her worn-out flats had never dared step. Heart pounding, she grabbed her notepad and hurried into the elevator. The conference room looked like something out of a movie. Walls of glass revealed the sprawling skyline. Sleek leather chairs surrounded a table that probably cost more than her entire annual salary. And at the head of that table sat Alexander Reyes himself. Elena froze at the doorway. He looked even more unreal up close, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit cut to perfection. His dark eyes scanned the screens with sharp precision, his jaw tight with frustration. Around him, chaos reigned. Specialists hunched over laptops. Engineers argued. Consultants whispered theories. The air buzzed with tension. "Nothing's working," one of the senior engineers muttered. "We've tried every patch, every backup. It's the architecture itself," another snapped. "If we force a reboot now, we risk wiping." "Unacceptable," Alexander said, his voice like steel. "We are hours away from finalizing a deal worth billions." "Fix it." "Who's this?" someone demanded. pointing at her. Support staff, another replied dismissively. They sent backups. Alexander's gaze flicked toward her. For a second, their eyes locked, and she felt again that blinding heat, like standing too close to fire. Then his attention shifted away. Fine, he said. Everyone tries. No stone unturned. Elena's hands trembled as she sat at an empty station. She told herself she was useless here, that she was surrounded by minds far greater than hers. But as she scanned the lines of code on the frozen screens, something tugged at her. A tiny inconsistency. A string that didn't belong. Her breath caught. It was so small, so ridiculously simple, she almost laughed. Could it really be? The experts had been digging for hours, looking for complex flaws. But sometimes the deadliest problems were hidden in plain sight. Elena, one of the managers barked. Do you have something, or are you just sitting there? Her throat went dry. If she was wrong, she would be humiliated in front of the most powerful man in the company. But if she was right, she swallowed hard, then typed. Fingers flew over the keyboard, heart pounding as she isolated the error and rewrote the command. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. And then, like the sudden return of oxygen after suffocation, the screens lit up. The system rebooted. Databases reappeared. Emails flooded in. The room erupted in gasps and shouts. It's back. Check the logs. We're online again. Elena sat frozen, hardly believing what she'd done. And then she felt it, that gaze. Alexander Reyes was staring at her, not with dismissal, not with indifference, but with sharp, curious interest. The room celebrated, but Elena only heard her heartbeat. For the first time, the billionaire saw her. And for the first time, Elena wondered if her carefully invisible life was about to change forever. Elena had never wished more desperately to disappear. Around her, executives clapped each other on the back. Engineers scrambled to confirm stability, and phones buzzed with news that the billion-dollar merger could proceed after all. She sat frozen at her station, her trembling hands hidden under the desk, praying no one would ask questions. But someone did. What just happened? Demanded the lead consultant, his forehead slick with sweat. We've been trying for hours. Who fixed this? Dozens of eyes turned. Elena wished the ground would open and swallow her whole. She did, a junior engineer said, pointing. The consultant frowned. Who are you? Elena Cruz, she stammered. Her voice barely carried over the noise. IT support, sir. A few snickers erupted around the room. Support staff? The nobody from the lower floors? But the laughter died the moment Alexander Reyes stood. His presence silenced the room. He didn't need to raise his voice. He simply walked, slow and deliberate, until he stood across from her. You, he said, his eyes fixed on hers. Explain what you did. Elena's throat closed. She could feel her colleagues staring, feel her palms sweat, feel every nerve scream at her to run. But something in his gaze, sharp, expectant, compelled her to answer. There was a misplaced string in the server code, she managed. A redundant loop. Everyone was patching over it, but the system kept re-triggering the error. I removed the loop, reset the cache, and redirected the path. Silence. Then a murmur spread. The consultant flushed red, muttering something about oversight. Alexander's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly, as if reassessing her entirely. And you saw this, he said slowly, when others didn't? Elena swallowed. I just noticed, sir. A corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but something close. Noticed, he repeated. He turned to the room. Problem solved. Secure the merger. Meeting adjourned. The command was final. People scrambled, phones dialing, laptops snapping shut. Within minutes, the crisis room emptied, leaving Elena sitting stunned in her chair. She thought she could slip out unnoticed. But then, Ms. Cruz. Her heart jumped. Alexander Reyes was standing beside her, hands in his pockets, his gaze unreadable. Yes, sir, she whispered. He studied her for a long moment, as if peeling away layers she didn't even know she wore. Finally, he said, good work. 2 words. That was all. But to Elena, it felt like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Thank you, sir. She managed, her voice shaking. He nodded once, then walked away. Just like that, the encounter was over. But Elena knew, deep in the pit of her stomach, that something irreversible had shifted. By the time she returned to the 14th floor, her coworkers already knew. News traveled fast in the skyscraper, faster than the elevators. "You fix a system," one colleague gasped. "In front of Reyes himself?" Another whispered. "You're kidding. The CEO actually talked to you." Elena tried to laugh it off, but her cheeks burned. "It was nothing. I just got lucky." But luck didn't explain the way his eyes had lingered. Luck didn't explain why her chest felt tight whenever she replayed his voice in her head. She forced herself back to routine. Emails, tickets, hardware requests. Ordinary tasks in an ordinary life. Yet ordinary no longer felt possible. 2 days later, her world tilted again. Elena Cruz? She looked up to find a tall man in a dark suit standing at her cubicle. He wasn't from her department. He carried the quiet authority of someone who belonged closer to the top floors. "Yes," she said cautiously. "Mr. Reyes requests your presence." Her heart stopped. "And Mr. Reyes?" He nodded. "His office. Now." Whispers followed her as she rose, clutching her notepad like a shield. Colleagues exchanged wide-eyed looks. Nobody from IT support ever got summoned to the 50th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. Her reflection in the mirrored walls showed a nervous woman in a plain blouse and scuffed shoes. What was she doing here? When the doors opened, she stepped into another world. Polished marble floors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Silence, broken only by the soft hum of air conditioning. "Mr. Reyes is expecting you," the receptionist said, guiding her to a set of double doors. Elena's knees wobbled as she entered. The office was enormous, lined with shelves of books and art pieces that probably cost more than her apartment building. Behind a sleek desk, Alexander Reyes looked up. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't cold either. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Elena obeyed, clutching her notepad as though it might anchor her to reality. "You solved a problem my best experts couldn't," he began. "That interests me." Her pulse raced. I was just doing my job, sir." "Your job," he repeated, leaning back. "Do you always do your job at that level?" She faltered. I try." A pause stretched between them. He studied her, his gaze sharp but not unkind. Finally, he said, "I want you on the task force for the merger integration. Effective immediately." Elena's mouth fell open. "Me? But I'm just support staff." "Not anymore," Alexander interrupted. "Report to the 28th floor tomorrow. You'll assist directly under my chief of operations." Her world spun. Promotion? Overnight? It was impossible. Unthinkable. "But, sir, I don't." "You can," he said firmly. "I saw it. You have an eye others lack. Don't waste it hiding in cubicles." Her protest died on her lips. His conviction was absolute, leaving no room for doubt. She nodded shakily. "Yes, sir." Alexander leaned forward slightly. "One more thing." Her breath caught. "Why, yes." His eyes held hers, steady and intense. "Don't let anyone make you feel smaller than you are. Not here. Not anywhere." The words pierced deeper than he could know. Elena felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to reply, to thank him, to say something, anything, but all she managed was a faint nod. "Good," he said, leaning back. "You're dismissed." She stood on shaky legs, her heart hammering, her mind reeling. As she reached the door, she heard him add quietly, almost to himself, "Let's see where this goes." That night, Elena lay awake in her tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't just the sudden promotion. It wasn't just the way her life had tilted overnight. It was him, Alexander Reyes, the billionaire untouchable. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt like she was standing at the edge of a storm that might change everything. Elena tried to convince herself it was nothing. Yes, she had been promoted. Yes, she had spoken to the CEO of the company. But it was just work, nothing more. People didn't live fairy tales in real life. Billionaires didn't notice nobodies. But life had other plans. The very next week, Elena found herself in a sleek conference room on the 28th floor, surrounded by senior staff who looked at her with thinly veiled suspicion. She was the newcomer, the outsider who had bypassed years of hierarchy. She could feel their judgment pressing against her back like cold wind. Still, she kept her head down, taking notes, observing carefully. Alexander was at the head of the table. He barely looked at her, his attention fixed on the complex merger plans unfolding on the screens. But every time his voice cut through the room, deep, assured, Elena felt her chest tighten. It was during a break that it happened. She was studying a line of integration data on her laptop when a shadow fell across her desk. "You see something the others don't," Alexander said quietly. She jumped. "Sir." He nodded toward her screen. "Your face gives it away. You've spotted something." Heat flooded her cheeks. I wasn't sure if I should say anything." "Say it," he ordered, not unkindly. She hesitated, then pointed. "This model assumes client migration will be linear. But based on server load, it won't. You'll have cascading delays. Unless you stagger the migration, the system could bottleneck." There was a pause. Then Alexander's lips curved, just slightly. "Interesting." Before she could panic, he gestured toward the head of operations. "Adjust the plan. Cruz is right." A murmur rippled around the table. Elena ducked her head, wishing she could vanish. But when she risked a glance upward, she found Alexander watching her with a look she couldn't quite read. It wasn't just interest. It was curiosity, and something else she dared not name. It started innocently enough. One afternoon, after a long meeting, Alexander stopped by her desk. "Walk with me," he said. Elena blinked. "Sir, I need coffee. You'll join me." It wasn't a request. It never was with him. They went to a quiet cafe tucked in a corner of the skyscraper's lobby, a place she had passed 100 times but never entered. Alexander ordered an espresso. Elena, too flustered to think, asked for plain brewed coffee. For a few minutes, silence stretched between them. She stared at her cup, unsure why on earth he had brought her here. Then he said, "Why do you work here, Elena?" The question startled her. To earn a living, sir." "That's not an answer," he said evenly. "You could earn a living anywhere." "Why Reyes Global?" She hesitated. No one had ever cared about her reasons before. "Because it's stable. Secure. My family depends on me." Something flickered in his gaze. "Family?" "Yes," she said softly. "My parents are in the province. My younger brother's in school. Every peso I send matters." He leaned back, studying her. "You don't want more?" The question cut deep. She didn't want more. She wanted freedom from counting coins at the grocery store, from sleepless nights worrying about bills, from always being the one overlooked. But she couldn't say that. Not to him. So she just said, "I can't afford to want more." For the first time, his expression softened. "Maybe you can," he murmured. Elena's heart skipped. She looked away, willing herself to breathe. That became the first of many coffees. At first, they spoke of work, systems, strategy, numbers. But slowly, carefully, the conversation stretched. He asked about her childhood. She asked about his travels. He teased her about her thrift shop shoes. She teased him about his obsession with black suits. And somewhere between laughter and silence, the invisible line between CEO and staff blurred. By the second week, whispers began. "Have you seen her? She's always with him. Coffee breaks? Meetings? Who does she think she is?" Elena heard them all. In the hallways, in the elevator, in the restroom, where voices dropped the moment she walked in. It stung. She had worked hard to stay invisible, to avoid envy or malice. Now, suddenly, she was the center of every rumor. They say she's his new favorite. They say she's angling for a raise. They say she's more than just staff. Elena burned with shame. She wanted to shout that it wasn't true, that Alexander's attention had nothing to do with romance. But deep inside, she knew she couldn't deny the truth entirely. Because sometimes, when his hand brushed hers as they reached for the same folder, or when his eyes lingered a fraction too long, she felt something stir. Something dangerous. She tried to pull back, to bury herself in work. But Alexander didn't let her. "You've been avoiding me," he said one afternoon, appearing at her desk. Elena flushed. I've just been busy." He leaned closer, his voice low enough only she could hear. Let them whisper. They don't matter. Her breath caught. But it matters to me. For the first time, his expression softened into something almost gentle. Then let me prove to you that they're wrong. She didn't know what he meant. She wasn't sure she wanted to, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had stopped being ordinary, and her heart was no longer safe. Elena thought she had adjusted to the whispers, to the way people glanced at her when she passed. She told herself she could manage as long as she kept her head down. But she wasn't prepared for Cassandra Montemayor. Cassandra was everything Elena was not: glamorous, confident, with the kind of effortless beauty that graced magazine covers. She swept into the office one morning in a designer dress, her heels clicking like a declaration of war. Cassandra. Alexander greeted her in the executive lounge. His tone was polite but cool. Elena only knew her name because the entire building buzzed with it. Cassandra Montemayor, socialite, businesswoman, and, most importantly, Alexander Reyes' long-assumed fiancée. She was perfect, born into wealth, raised in elite circles, the kind of woman who belonged at Alexander's side. And she noticed Elena immediately. You must be the assistant, Cassandra said smoothly, her eyes gliding over Elena like she was furniture. Elena forced a polite smile. Elena Cruz, IT integration. Cassandra's lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. How quaint. Elena bit her tongue. She had no right to be offended. Cassandra had every reason to see her as insignificant. And yet, the sting of dismissal burned deep. That afternoon, Cassandra strolled through the offices, chatting with staff, laughing with board members. But whenever her gaze landed on Elena, it sharpened, like a dagger slipping from its sheath. By evening, rumors had exploded. Cassandra was back. The engagement announcement was only a matter of time. Elena lay awake that night, staring at her ceiling. She told herself it didn't matter. Whatever bond she had with Alexander, it wasn't real. He belonged with Cassandra. But her heart ached with a truth she didn't want to admit. She had already fallen too far. The annual company gala was the event of the year. Executives, investors, and dignitaries gathered under crystal chandeliers, dressed in gowns and tuxedos. Elena had no intention of going. Support staff weren't expected to attend such affairs. But an invitation appeared on her desk, a sealed envelope, her name written in elegant script. Her first instinct was to refuse. The thought of standing in that glittering ballroom, surrounded by people who would sneer at her presence, made her stomach twist. But curiosity and something deeper pushed her to accept. She borrowed a dress from her cousin, a simple navy gown that hugged her frame modestly. She pulled her hair into a loose bun and wore the only heels she owned. When she arrived, she felt like an imposter walking among gods. And then she saw him. Alexander stood near the stage, commanding the room in a tailored black suit. His gaze swept across the crowd and found her. For a heartbeat, the world stilled. His eyes lingered, dark and unreadable, before he turned back to his conversation. Elena, a familiar voice called. She turned to see a group of colleagues. Their smiles were polite, but their eyes glittered with mockery. Didn't know they let support staff in tonight. Heat rushed her face. She was about to excuse herself when music swelled. And suddenly Alexander was there, standing before her, his hand outstretched. Dance with me, he said. The entire ballroom seemed to freeze. Cassandra, radiant in a red gown, stood across the room, her face tightening. Elena's breath caught. I don't dance. You will, Alexander replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. He led her onto the dance floor. Gasps rippled through the crowd as he pulled her into his arms. You're causing a scene, she whispered, panicked. Good, he murmured, his eyes locked on hers. Let them see. As they moved, the whispers grew louder. Cassandra's glare burned like fire from the sidelines. But in that moment, Elena felt weightless. It was reckless. It was impossible. And yet, with every step, every brush of his hand, the truth settled deeper. Alexander Reyes wanted her. Not Cassandra, not anyone else. The song ended. Applause erupted, though most of it felt strained. Alexander didn't release her immediately. His gaze lingered, his thumb brushing lightly against her hand before he let go. Elena's heart thundered. She knew she was standing on dangerous ground, but she also knew there was no turning back. The fallout came fast. By Monday, the office buzzed with fury. Cassandra's allies whispered venomously. Elena found nasty notes slipped on her desk, her locker defaced with scrawled insults. Gold digger, ambitious snake, stay in your place. She tried to ignore them, but the weight grew unbearable. Even her own colleagues, once friendly, now kept their distance, afraid of being dragged into the scandal. One afternoon, Cassandra cornered her in the restroom. "You think you've won his attention," Cassandra said, her voice smooth but deadly. "But women like you don't last. Alexander is a Reyes. He belongs with his own kind." Elena's throat tightened. "I never." "You should quit," Cassandra cut her off, her lips curving into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Before you embarrass yourself further." Tears burned behind Elena's eyes, but she refused to let them fall until she was alone. That night, she sat in her apartment, staring at her resignation letter. Maybe Cassandra was right. Maybe she didn't belong in Alexander's world. Her phone buzzed. A message. From him. "Meet me. Rooftop. Now." Elena hesitated. Then, with trembling hands, she grabbed her coat and went. The rooftop was quiet, the city lights sprawling below. Alexander stood near the edge, his gaze fixed on the skyline. When he turned, his eyes softened. "You were going to quit." She froze. "How do you? I know everything that happens in my company." He stepped closer. "Don't let them drive you out." Tears slipped free. "I don't belong here, Alexander. Look at me. Look at you. It's impossible." He reached for her hand, his touch firm, grounding. "You belong exactly where you are. With me." Her breath caught. "Why me?" "Because," he said simply, his voice low and certain, "you see me. Not the billionaire, not the empire me. And I won't let you walk away." The rooftop spun. Elena wanted to believe him, wanted to sink into his arms and forget the world. But the voices of doubt were loud, clawing at her heart. She whispered, "You'll regret this." His grip tightened. "Never." And in that moment, beneath the glow of the city, Elena knew she was standing at the edge of something dangerous, something that could either destroy her or save her. The rumors didn't stop. If anything, they grew sharper, uglier. People whispered about Elena's clothes, her accent, even her tiny apartment. They called her a pretender, a nobody who dared to reach too high. But what hurt most was how they started digging into her past. It began with a blog post from a gossip site. "Mystery woman captures Reyes heir's attention." But who is she really? They wrote about her neighborhood, her family's small bakery that had long since closed, her father who had driven a taxi until his health failed. They painted her life as a sob story, twisting every detail into something shameful. "Did you read it?" her coworker whispered one morning, eyes darting nervously. Elena forced a smile. "No, and I don't intend to." But she had. Every cruel word. That night, she sat with her mother over dinner. The old woman's hands trembled as she ladled soup into Elena's bowl. "They're saying things about you," her mother said softly. "People at church, they ask questions." Elena swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, Ma." Her mother reached across the table, grasping her hand. "Don't apologize for living your life. You've worked hard for everything you have. Don't let them make you feel unworthy." Elena wanted to believe that. But when she walked into the office the next day and found printed copies of the article taped to her desk, the shame was suffocating. She ripped them down, tears stinging her eyes. And then she saw Alexander standing at the end of the hall. His jaw was set, his eyes stormy. Without a word, he turned and strode into his office. Minutes later, every trace of the article vanished from the building. An internal memo was sent. "Any harassment will result in termination." But the damage was done. Elena knew the truth now. She could never escape her past. Elena thought things couldn't get worse. She was wrong. 2 weeks later, photos surfaced online, blurry but unmistakable, of her and Alexander on the rooftop, his hand holding hers, their faces inches apart. The headline screamed, Reyes heir's secret romance exposed. The news spread like wildfire. Television anchors debated her background. Journalists hounded her family's home. Photographers lurked outside her apartment. At work, chaos reigned. The board demanded explanations. Cassandra fumed, her family publicly condemning Alexander's reckless behavior. Elena barely made it through the day. Every time she turned, a camera seemed to flash, or a colleague's whisper pricked her ears. That night, she received a call from her younger brother. His voice shook. 8 reporters came to the school today. They asked me about you. About Alexander. They embarrassed me in front of my classmates. Elena's chest tightened. I'm so sorry. I'll fix this. But how? When she arrived at work the next morning, security guards escorted her through a crowd of shouting reporters. Questions flew at her like daggers. Are you after his money? Did you manipulate him? Do you expect a wedding soon? Her hands trembled as she entered the elevator. She wanted to disappear. Inside Alexander's office, the board meeting was heated. This relationship is unacceptable, one director barked. It threatens the company's image. She's a liability, another said sharply. End it before we lose investors. Alexander's voice was cold steel. I don't end relationships because you disapprove. But Elena knew the truth. They were right. Her presence endangered everything he had built. She left the building without telling him. By the time Alexander realized she was gone, Elena was on a bus headed to her mother's province, leaving the city lights behind. The countryside air was quiet, filled with the scent of rice fields and mango trees. Elena sat on the porch of her mother's modest home, staring at the horizon. She told herself she had made the right choice. She had freed Alexander from the burden of her scandal, from the humiliation of her past. But at night, when she lay in her childhood bed, she ached with longing. She missed the sound of his voice, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her. Days passed. She avoided television, avoided her phone. But gossip reached even here. Neighbors whispering, relatives asking questions. Then one evening, headlights swept across the yard. A sleek black car pulled up, dust swirling around its tires. Her heart stopped. Alexander stepped out. His suit was rumpled, his hair disheveled, as if he hadn't slept in days. Elena, he said, his voice raw. She froze on the porch steps. You shouldn't be here. I looked everywhere, he continued, climbing the steps toward her. Do you have any idea what it's been like, not knowing where you were? Her throat tightened. I left so you could be free. I was ruining everything for you. Your company, your family. Stop, he said sharply. Then softer. Do you really think I care about any of that more than I care about you? Tears blurred her vision. You'll lose everything, Alexander. He cupped her face in his hands. Then let it be. I'd rather lose everything than lose you. The night air hummed with cicadas, the stars sharp above them. And for the first time, Elena allowed herself to believe him. Slowly, she leaned into his embrace. For a heartbeat, it felt like the world had stilled, like maybe against all odds they could make it. But she knew deep down this wasn't the end. The fight was only beginning. Alexander had always known his family could be ruthless. But facing them now, with Elena's hand clasped in his, was something else entirely. The Reyes estate dining room was vast and intimidating, its long mahogany table gleaming under chandeliers. His father sat at the head, expression carved in stone. His mother, dignified and cold, sipped tea without a word. Cassandra and her parents were present too, looking like royalty awaiting a verdict. Elena Cruz, his father said finally, his voice low and dangerous. Is this truly the woman you've chosen? Yes, Alexander replied, his tone unwavering. His mother's eyes narrowed. She's not one of us. She brings shame to this family. She saved my company. Alexander shot back. She's worth more than any socialite you parade in front of me. Cassandra's laugh was delicate, mocking. She saw the glitch in your system, Alex. That doesn't make her your equal. Elena's face burned. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but Alexander's grip tightened under the table. His father's voice hardened. You are the heir to this empire. If you continue this foolishness, you will lose everything. Do you understand? Alexander leaned forward, his eyes blazing. Then take it. Take the money, the company, the empire. I won't trade her for any of it. A gasp rippled through the room. Cassandra's smile faltered. His mother's teacup clattered onto its saucer. But Alexander didn't flinch. His hand never left Elena's. That night, as they left the estate, Elena whispered, "You shouldn't have said that." "I meant every word," he said firmly. But Elena's heart trembled. She knew love was powerful, but could it really withstand a family like his? Cassandra Montemayor was not a woman who lost gracefully. The night after the family confrontation, she sat in her penthouse, swirling wine in a crystal glass. Rage simmered beneath her flawless exterior. Alexander had humiliated her, dancing with Elena, rejecting her in front of his parents, choosing a nobody over her. But Cassandra had one final card to play. The next morning, news broke, leaked financial documents, rumors of a scandal implicating Elena in fraud. Articles claimed she had manipulated company systems, fabricated numbers to make herself appear indispensable. It was a lie, but the damage was devastating. "Ms. Cruz, we'll need your ID badge," HR told her coldly. "Until the investigation clears, you're suspended." Elena stood frozen, disbelief crashing over her. "I didn't do this. I swear." But no one listened. Security escorted her out, past rows of gawking employees. She collapsed on a bench outside the building, her chest heaving. Everything she had worked for was gone. Then a car pulled up, the window lowered. Cassandra sat inside, lips curved in triumph. "Don't take it personally, dear," she purred. "You simply don't belong in his world. This is how it ends for you." Elena's hands shook, but her voice came out steady. "One day, he'll see you for what you really are." Cassandra's smile widened. "He already has. And he still chose me once before, didn't he?" History has a way of repeating itself. The car pulled away, leaving Elena trembling in the street. That evening, Alexander stormed into her apartment, his expression furious. "It's Cassandra," he said without preamble. "She planted this. I'll prove it." Elena shook her head. "Alexander, don't. This is your world." "She's right. I don't belong." "Don't you dare believe her," he said fiercely. "You're the only person I've ever trusted." But the seed of doubt had been planted deep. Elena wasn't sure if she could survive being in his world much longer. The investigation dragged on for days. Alexander fought tirelessly, pulling strings, hiring private investigators, digging for the truth. Meanwhile, Elena's life unraveled. Reporters camped outside her building. Strangers hurled insults when she walked by. Her family received threatening phone calls. One night, she found her mother crying in the kitchen. "They say you'll go to jail," her mother whispered. "They say you ruined him." "Elena, maybe it's better if you let him go." Her heart broke. For her mother, for her brother, for herself. So when Alexander showed up at her door, eyes burning with determination, Elena did the unthinkable. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. He froze. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's over." Tears streamed down her face. "You'll lose everything because of me. Your company, your family, your name. I won't let you destroy yourself for me." His hands clenched at his sides. "You don't get to decide that. I choose you, Elena. No one else." But she shook her head, choking back sobs. Sometimes love isn't enough. And with those words, she closed the door on him. On the other side, Alexander stood motionless, his chest heaving. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. But as he walked away into the night, one thought crystallized in his mind. This isn't the end. I'll fight for her, even if it's the last thing I do. Alexander hadn't slept in days. He worked around the clock with his team of investigators, determined to clear Elena's name. Finally, they found it. A trail of forged documents, false transactions, and digital fingerprints leading straight back to Cassandra's private office. At dawn, Alexander burst into the boardroom, slamming a thick folder onto the polished table. "This," he said coldly, "is the truth." The directors flipped through the evidence, their faces blanching as the damning details unfolded. Cassandra had orchestrated the entire scandal. She had bribed insiders, manipulated data, and leaked false documents to the press. Cassandra herself sat at the far end of the table, her face pale, but her chin high. "This is outrageous," she hissed. "You can't prove any of it." Alexander leaned forward, eyes blazing. "I don't need to. The prosecutors will." A stunned silence filled the room. Finally, one of the directors spoke. "This is unforgivable. Ms. Montemayor, you are hereby banned from all Reyes enterprises." Cassandra's mask cracked. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, but no words came. Security moved to escort her out. As she passed Alexander, her eyes flashed with venom. "She'll ruin you," she spat. "Mark my words, Elena Cruz will be the end of you." Alexander didn't flinch. "No," he said evenly. "She saved me." The news exploded across every media outlet. Cassandra Montemayor exposed in corporate sabotage scandal. Public opinion shifted overnight. Elena was cleared of all charges, praised as the woman who had been unjustly framed. But while the world now saw her differently, Elena herself still struggled. When Alexander appeared at her door again, she almost didn't open it. But his voice, low, rough with exhaustion, made her heart ache. "Elena, please." She opened the door. He looked worn, his eyes shadowed, but there was relief in his expression when he saw her. "It's over," he said simply. "Cassandra's gone. You're free." Elena's throat tightened. "But your family, they'll come around," he interrupted. "Or they won't. It doesn't matter." Her tears spilled over. "It does matter, Alex. I can't stand the thought of being the reason you lose everything." He stepped closer, his hands trembling as he cupped her face. "Listen to me. None of it means anything without you. The company, the money, the name, it's all empty. You're the only thing that makes it real." Her breath caught. "Why me?" "Because," he whispered, his forehead pressing against hers, "you remind me of who I am. Not Alexander Reyes, the billionaire. Just Alex, the man who can breathe when you're near." Elena's sobs broke free as she clung to him. For the first time, she let herself believe, truly believe, that maybe this love wasn't a mistake. But deep down, fear still whispered, what if love wasn't enough? The days that followed were a storm. Alexander's family was furious. Investors wavered, doubting his judgment. Tabloids ran headlines mocking the Cinderella romance. Everywhere they turned, obstacles rose. One evening, Elena sat with him in his penthouse, staring out at the glittering city below. Her voice was quiet, almost broken. "They'll never stop, Alex. The whispers, the doubt. Every step we take, they'll try to pull us apart." He took her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "Then let them try. I'm not letting go." Her eyes filled. "But what if I'm not strong enough?" "Then I'll be strong for both of us," he said firmly. The room went still. The air between them was thick with all the words they hadn't said. Finally, Elena whispered, "I love you." Alexander froze. His breath caught, as though he hadn't dared hope to hear it. Then, slowly, he smiled, a rare, unguarded smile that softened every hard edge of his face. "I love you too," he said. The words hung between them like a promise, fragile yet unbreakable. For the first time, Elena didn't feel like she was standing against the world alone. She was standing with him. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The media frenzy was relentless. Every move Elena made was scrutinized. Every appearance Alexander made was dissected. But he had made a decision. At the next shareholder meeting, Alexander walked into the boardroom with Elena by his side. Whispers spread like wildfire. Cameras flashed, journalists scribbled notes, and the board shifted nervously in their seats. He stood at the podium, his gaze sweeping the room, then settling on Elena. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I know there's been a lot of discussion about my personal life, about who I choose to stand with. Let me be clear, I will not apologize for love. I will not apologize for choosing the person who has proven herself indispensable, loyal, and courageous. That person is Elena Cruz." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the room. Cassandra's family scowled from the corner. But Alexander didn't flinch. "She saved this company," he continued, turning to Elena. "Not once, but twice. And she saved me from becoming someone I didn't want to be." from losing myself, and I will spend every day making sure she knows her worth in this company and in my life." The room went silent. Slowly, applause began to rise. Elena's eyes brimmed with tears. For the first time, she didn't feel like a nobody. She felt seen, valued, and chosen. Cameras captured the moment, flashing it across screens worldwide. Billionaire CEO publicly declaring his love for the woman everyone had tried to tear down. Even with Alexander's public declaration, Elena still wrestled with doubt. Could she truly step into his world? Could she accept a life of scrutiny, of pressure, of endless expectation? That night, they walked through the quiet city streets, hand in hand. Lights reflected off wet pavement from the evening rain, creating a mosaic of golds and blues. "I'm scared," Elena admitted. Her voice trembled. "I've fought so hard to survive on my own. What if I lose myself in your world?" Alexander stopped and turned to her. "Elena, I don't want to change who you are. I love you because of who you are, not for the position you hold, not for the victories you've won, though they are remarkable, but because you're you." Her tears fell freely. "I don't deserve this, or you." He cupped her face, brushing a thumb across her cheek. "You do, and you've earned it, more than anyone. So now, I'm giving you a choice." Elena looked at him, heart pounding. "A choice? Yes. You can walk away, stay in the life you've built, and be safe. Or you can step fully into mine, knowing it will be messy, challenging, but real." She swallowed. Every instinct screamed safety, but every heartbeat whispered him. I choose you," she said, her voice strong despite the tremor. Alexander's grin was radiant. "Then welcome, Elena Cruz, to everything." The following months were a whirlwind. Elena took her place as a trusted partner in the company, earning respect from employees and investors alike. Alexander's family slowly softened, recognizing her intelligence, integrity, and the unbreakable bond between them. Cassandra faded into obscurity, her schemes exposed, and her influence gone. One crisp morning, Elena stood on the rooftop where it had all begun, looking out over the city. Alexander joined her, a warm hand sliding into hers. "You've grown so much," he said softly. Elena smiled, leaning against him. "And you've made me believe I'm worth more than I ever thought." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "I'll spend every day proving it to you." The wind whispered around them, carrying the promise of everything they had fought for. Against all odds, they had chosen each other. Against every whisper, every doubt, every obstacle, love had won. Elena took a deep breath, feeling the city, the night, and the man beside her. Life was still messy, still unpredictable, but it was theirs. And in that moment, she realized the truth. She had never been a nobody. She had been the hero of her own story all along. And now, she shared it with a man who saw her for exactly who she was. They held each other tight, the skyline shimmering like a witness to their triumph. In a world of power, scandal, and wealth, they had found something far rarer, a love unshakable, unyielding, and fiercely their own. And so, against all odds, Elena and Alexander began the life they had fought for, a life built on trust, courage, and a love that nothing could break.